Okay. Good morning. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, all fraud fighters, and thank you for being here despite the heat, despite registration, despite everything. I'm Angeli. I will be the host for this morning, and I do fraud analytics for Double Verify. I truly love this, and I keep forgetting. I know Rotten is out there with logistics, but I see Daniel and many other great people who have helped so much with the. It's possible to have these events yearly, which is so. I'll do interactive challenge. So that's a good opportunity to text anyone who loves these games and is still outside getting coffee. Because personally, I find it that when you get to enjoy this addiction of solving mysteries in the fraud research world and get it right, then you have a chance to kind of make it right for 1 second and catch the bad guys, which is what we're all about. So as a reminder, it is not to be taken for granted that fraud fighting practitioners come together every year to share insight, methodologies, and cool technologies. We trust everyone here to respect that by not taking videos without explicit consent from the speakers, by not making quotes that are attributed directly to any speaker. Let's protect this community, because this is absolutely a joy to be here again. And I say that with all the logistics problems in the world, it's a bit like childbirth. I keep forgetting the trouble and then we do it all over again. Meanwhile, for some reason, this is the 7th year that we're doing FraudCON, which is wonderful. So thank you, the whole team at the university, the ICRC team with Yuri Rivner behind the scenes, to the committee. Thank you, sponsors, partners, BioCatch Water, and thank you, the Fraud Fighters Meetups community, for bringing up and helping speakers find opportunities throughout the year to share their insights. Okay, ready for some warm-up? Let's do a challenge. The game is, as always, to decide if the following details represent a case of fraud or not fraud. In this simulation, we're going to pretend that we work for a P2P company, right? It can be Venmo, it can be Paybox or Beat in Israel, or any of the other services that can do P2P. Banks are also walking into this space. And you are facing an account that was just suspended by your automated model. Did the model get it right or not? Should the account remain suspended? So I will ask you to vote with each slide, okay? And we will reveal gradually more and more information about the case study. The case studies were pulled together, inspired and based on true events. So this is like data that is collected from a couple of stops on the user journey. You will need to go like this if you think the details represent fraud. Okay, this is fraud, so the account should be suspended. This is legit, the account should be released. This is if you absolutely cannot decide and need more data. I can relate, we always need more data. Okay, any questions? Yes. So our account was suspended after, for the last hour before its suspension, it was initiating payments to 3 recipients, and each of the payments was $30 worth and had a free text comment that says taxi. The sender's account also went online with the chat with customer support and texted, help, there's a virus on my phone. Then they disappeared. At this point, can you go like this if you think this is fraud? Come on, no one? Okay. Okay. Let's just do it collectively to save time. So everyone, just go this or this or this based on. Wow. I love that. I love that because I did test this one on like random people in my life. And they all thought fraud at this point. I love that people here take everything with a grain of salt, and that's wonderful. Let's hear more about this user, right? So the 6 taxi payments, only 2 of them went through. Okay, this has to change things for the model and for us as researchers as well. The natural question for most of us in doing research is what are the relations between the recipients, between the sender? No relation is found, okay? Nothing, no data points are shared between them, except that everyone is in New York City. Actually, if you put it on a map, it looks like the recipient's location moves with the sender. So if the taxi story checks out, then it does look like the taxi is traveling upstate. Sorry, at this point, do like this if you think wrong, back. Everyone wants more data, and lots of people do think legit now. Good news for, okay, let's hear more. So we will go back in time and take 4 hours earlier some device data on the usage of the same machine. So this was a mobile device that was installing 4 hours earlier. This is some, we go into Fraud Lab stuff from Double Verify now. We are looking at a cleaner app, right? Some stuff that will promise you to get your phone, get rid of unwanted SDKs on your devices. And that has been installed. Now, when we go a little deeper into this app, we see that it's not as clean as you would want, and users are reporting the app is no longer available. So you go into archive.org or Wayback Machine to pull up some of the user reviews if you want. That's a helpful tip if people don't know that. And you see that users would want to give this up 100 zeros for making their phone crash. At this point, what do you think? And if anyone wants to offer a story to what happened here, if anyone wants to pitch in. Okay, just like that, how many people think this is legit? Or fraud? Most people now say fraud. Now, let's remind ourselves of what we are in this story, and let's reveal the answer, okay? So this is a case where the P2P payments should go through, despite the fact that the phone is obviously hijacked by the app. The phone did go into severe crash mode and kept crashing when the person who was trying to make the P2P payments was trying to order a cab. I can only relate to the speakers who had to have the same experience this morning after getting kicked off the shuttle. That's a story for another day. So you get desperate, right? You want to go to a conference when you are, when you are giving your talk, and you need something to pay the cab, because who carries cash at this point, right? So once the taxi apps failed because the phone kept restarting. Once the P2P payment, the first P2P payment, when we actually got a chance to talk with the person in another life where I was able to do B2C stuff, people tell us stories like, I got desperate, I panicked, I didn't know if the first payment went through, and so I tried making another one. This one of the stories I've heard, that they actually made the taxi stop by a hot dog stand to ask for cash from the hot dog vendor guy to pay the taxi, and then try to pay them back with the P2P payment again. And that's why you see these 3 stops. Of course, here, our responsibility is to understand as much as possible about the user story, about the journey, and what we could pick up while respecting user privacy, to understand and provide support to users who really need us at a time where your phone is dead and you have crashed. I actually see some researchers who are defending devices from this type of attack walking in the room right now. So thank you. Okay, one more, and then we can move on to the stories of people who actually fight this type of fraud every day. Okay, we got the gist now. Again, we have a virus story. Now we're looking at a $500 payment made to a newly opened account, and that account was able to pass through 3D secure, and through the MFA authentication. Now, once again, going on chat and saying that there's a virus on my computer this time, and disappearing when they try to get asked for questions. Okay, let's go like this. If you think this is legitimate and the account should be released from being suspended, or this, if you think the account should be suspended. Now I get a lot of "we need more data," which is great because it means you love the data.
You don't need more data once the computer is half. You can still do that.
Nice. At a certain age, we still do. Okay. Data point number 2, we go back in time. 2 hours earlier, the sender browser visits a torrenting website. I did forget to mention phones, but we're in web now. So the torrenting website actually does have a banner on their homepage saying that they would recommend using a VPN. They don't say which VPN, it's very ethical of them. And they say, let's use a VPN while you're downloading torrents. And indeed, on the payment, we see VPN is being used both for the $500 payment initiation and for the login to the customer support chat. So that was a bit, maybe too much data, but let's see. What do you think? Now, should the account remain suspended at this point? This should be suspended. Most people would keep it suspended or ask for more data. There are a few people who feel for the user and want them to get their chance to watch whatever it is that they want to download here. That's fine. Okay, we go into the lab again and we try to figure out what can that website do while they're helping you download your favorite content. So we see that the website triggers all kinds of background activity. And that means that when the website will be closed, you will still see some of the stuff that were popping up on your computer while the content was either playing or downloading. One of the things that would pop up is a phishing scheme. In this scenario, I took the funnier example, not the real one that we had in this case. But the phishing, my favorite phishing scheme, and I know that BioCatch, our sponsors, also are very familiar with this one, is the FBI schemes that tell you that you're being punished for watching whatever you have watched, and that your device will now be locked until the FBI is so merciful, until you pay them a fine of $500. Should this account remain suspended or not? We're trying to make this. Okay, so like this, if you think the account should remain suspended, now we have pretty much a consensus with everyone who is with us.
Wait, I have a question.
Good.
Which account should be suspended, the sender or the receiver?
What's that? Thank you, Gali. And I'm going to get back for this question when you're up here on the panel, because that's a great question. If you ask me, and I would imagine that you would say the same, in this case, both for different reasons. We're sure that the person who received the payment is either the phishing operator themselves, right? Or someone who was just someone who was hacked, ATO'd, account takeover story of the recipient account. So either way, there's something bad going on the recipient side. On the sender side, this is not an unauthorized payment scenario, right? This is really the person using their own card. But let's remember that they reached out to customer support and said, help, there's a virus on my computer, and then didn't reply to anything further. The cardholder could be pretty much setting up for something that I'm sure Dor can relate to making some friendly fraud down the road, to saying, yeah, it wasn't me, or I made the payment, but I was under a phishing attack. So here, again, user journeys, getting the wider understanding of what's behind the data, and as early as you can mitigate the whole attacks for here, the earlier you can be, the better you can protect probably the whole industry from this. Thank you for playing. Enjoy the day. It's going to be fun, I think, because we have the best speakers traveling all the way from parts of Israel despite the heat and across the Atlantic. Thank you so much for this. And with that, I am very, very happy to invite our keynote speaker, Angeli Jain, from YouTube, Trust and Safety Leader. Angeli and I go way back to PayPal days, and I just yesterday realized that I was an attacker on your own life because I was part of the ruse to. You said I can come up with this part of the fraud scheme to arrange your proposal way back.
That's true. That is true.
Being here again. Thank you.
That is true. She scammed me. It was a beautiful scam, and ended up with my engagement.
Tourist scam, like most taxis.
All right, well, I'm the opening act, and really here to just kind of keep it light before we get into a lot of heavy topics throughout the day. Gili had asked me to talk about my career journey, and so I thought, okay, what's a good way to open? And I thought I'll open with a joke. You know, the internet says it's a great way to start a with a joke. And my husband looked at me and said, "You're not funny. Don't do that." So I went to ChatGPT and Bard and thought, okay, well, you know, there's got to be some good jokes out there. They were all really bad, so I'm going to tell you on your own time. If you really want to see some boring jokes, you can go and talk to ChatGPT later. But I'll start with asking a question. How many of you knew you wanted to be fraud fighters when you were in school and that you wanted to go into this industry? This was your passion. Yeah, nobody. And how many of you felt imposter syndrome, you know, throughout your career where it's like, why are you asking me to do this? Couldn't find anyone better. Has anyone felt imposter syndrome at all? I see a couple hands, a few hands. Yeah, okay, all right. All right, well, with that start, I will tell you a little bit about my career journey. I didn't actually set a goal and have a paved path. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And so I'm going to divide the talk into two parts. One is about my career journey, and the other is just some thoughts I've learned along the way and things that make me think about the future. So I broke it down into 3 C's, and I have 2 kids, aged 7 and 4, so there's a kid theme in here where I've been reading a lot of kids' books with them, and so I broke my 3 C's into something hopefully relatable and characters you may know. The first one is being curious. I think this developed from a very early age, curiosity. And I was a very curious kid. I like to just figure out all the new gadgets and things that came into our house, how they worked. This is a VCR for anyone who may not have been around during the analog time. But that was the first thing I actually took apart, was the VCR. And when we got our first computer, you know, I was very fascinated by it, and again, wanted to just take it apart, learn how it worked. And my parents, even though being immigrant Indian parents, did not dictate my future and tell me I needed to become a doctor. They said, hey, it seems like you're really interested in this technology stuff, and you know, so-and-so's son over there went to this university that's supposed to be good for technology. It's cantaloupe, watermelon. Oh, I know it has some sort of melon in there. And I kid you not, my mom actually said that. And I ended up at Carnegie Mellon. And throughout my journey there, I still couldn't figure out what I wanted to do. And so I did a bunch of different internships, everything from, you know, Goldman Sachs to the NBA, which both sound way cooler than they actually were. But through all the internship experiences, I actually just weeded out what I didn't want to do. And I found that it was very important to me to find meaning in what I do. And so that gets me to the next phase, which is when I started my career. I started in consulting, and I was living in DC at the time. And the first couple projects that I was working on really taught me about spotting vulnerabilities and looking for new capabilities. And so one of my projects early on was, as the military was acquiring new planes, we would go through and look at them to see for vulnerabilities. Oh, actually, the comm system on this new plane can't talk with all the old planes. If you're up in the air, that could be a really big disaster. Hey, we need to evolve this technology. So spotting those vulnerabilities in the system. And on the other hand, it was finding capabilities. So during natural disasters, how can the government get funds out to where a natural disaster is taking place and how do we reimbursement. And I found those projects really meaningful because I felt like it was actually trying to help and improve something. From there, I got a call to the Bay Area. I'd been on the East Coast my entire life. I thought, sure, someone wants to fly me to the Bay Area for an interview. Sounds great, the flight, see how it is. And when I got there, I met a bunch of just really smart people who whiteboarded with me all day and wanted to solve interesting problems. And that curiosity kicked in on, hey, how do we want to solve fraud online? And I ended up just taking a risk analyst job there, where I met actually a lot of great people, some who are in this audience today. I spent about 6 years at PayPal learning about online fraud. And I think at that time it was really interesting because we were using ML even back in the early 2000s to combat fraud. And so just watching the evolution of how we did that was fascinating. So from being a risk analyst, I ended up moving to Google, where I continued in this kind of online commerce. How do we actually think about building risk platforms to solve for different types of monetization and incentive abuse? And this is where I learned my second C, courage. So going back to that imposter syndrome, I actually think it's interesting. There's almost like a level of competence you have and confidence you have in that, which is either high and you're complacent, or low and you feel imposter syndrome. And the benefit of taking advantage of that imposter syndrome is that you work harder and you really think about, okay, well, how do I actually start proving that I can do this? And so I learned how to take that and force it into courage. So speaking up, finding issues, making it known when I had an insight. And the best advice I'd gotten at the time was, be really good at raising these insights and problems. No one actually knows how to solve these. Just come up with the solutions too, and figure out what can we do here, and tell us what to do. And so finding that courage to actually speak up and tell people, hey, I see this problem. I think we can do this about it, and just going with it. So when you feel that imposter syndrome, just take the courage. The worst that can happen is maybe you're wrong and you'll evolve your answer over time. From there, I ended up going to Airbnb, where the fraud landscape was very different. This is now people trusting to give their homes to strangers. And so it came up with a really fascinating question of, can your online behavior dictate your offline behavior? And so now my curiosity kicked in, my courage kicked in. I said, okay, this is a problem that there's not really a clear answer to, and I want to try to solve it. And so I joined Airbnb, where there really wasn't too much of a trust and safety team. And we said, okay, how do we want to solve this problem? Along the way, we found tons of other things. And this is where, as most of you know, in the fraud world, all the pieces add up. You can't just solve one problem in a silo. You have to solve the security issues. You have to solve the account issues. You have to solve the financial issues. You have to solve the content issues. And the signals along that entire journey are going to be useful for you in solving whatever that next problem is. And so I built the trust and safety team there, and it was a really great journey. Until in 2020, someone called from YouTube and said, hey, it's 2020, it's election season, and we've been really investing in content abuse. We're really good at finding bad content, but it seems like there's a lot of adversarial actors now, and there's a lot of incentives here that we probably need to start thinking about how we want to solve it, which, it's YouTube. At the scale of YouTube, I'm like, you haven't solved this yet? And so there we go. I ended up at YouTube. I said, I'm curious, I have courage, and I'm interested in trying to solve this problem. And I joined YouTube. And the third C is collaboration. So at Airbnb and YouTube, these are now large companies. The one thing I would say is the third C of the journey is learning how to collaborate internally with all the other teams, because you have to find those vulnerabilities and those gaps even within your own systems. With industry, because you have to understand what are the trends hitting other areas and how that's going to come to you, and share best practices. And with academia, because you also want to make sure that you're kind of not insular in how you're looking at things and you're looking from different perspectives. So the 3 C's from my career were curiosity, courage, and collaboration. And so that kind of gets me to the next stage, which is, what are the things that I think about going forward? Generally, in the landscape of adversarial abuse, the goal is to raise the cost. To be easily walking in through the front door and being able to defraud you. You want to make them tired, and you want to make them go away because they're operating businesses and you want to break their ROI. So the general name of the game is understand the incentives. What are they after? How are they going after it? What's the end game? And when you understand the end game, you can now look for all the tactics. How are they getting there? What are they doing? And then from there, you say, okay, great. How do I break the cost or make the cost higher? So from here, you're really thinking about what are the speed bumps I can put in where good users can still go through, but help raise that cost to make this not worth it for those adversarial actors. And in order to do this, we've been pretty lucky that there's just been a lot of data to do all that behavioral analytics that we've been doing for so long. But it's interesting, the data landscape is changing. Digital platforms are much more integrated in our lives, and generative AI is spitting out a volume of data that's being mixed in with real data. So how do you end up finding how to protect real user data and how to discern fake data, synthetic identities, fake news, etc.? The sheer volume of data is changing, and the attack surface is increasing as well. With cloud computing and connected devices, we're now seeing more ways for attackers to get in as well. And so detection and enforcement is really only getting us so far. Prevention is really, I think, where things are starting to lean into. And you can see this with a lot of companies starting to take trust and safety really seriously. It's becoming much more of a brand differentiator, and people are really thinking through how they can make sure that they're safe to begin with. So building it into your product design and making sure you're educating not just your employees, but also your users on what they can do to safeguard themselves and best practices. Because we can't operate in silos anymore where you can kind of be one back office that's going to solve everything for everyone. You need now everyone else to pitch in and take that communal effort. And then regulations. We see now regulations on privacy heating up. And sometimes, you get the spirit of the regulation that's to come, but maybe it's not in the best advantage for trust and safety. And so we need more collaboration on that side as well. How are we actually talking to regulators and making sure that we are trying to prevent abuse, but we're also not kind of tying our hands behind our back from the fraud fighting side as well. And so really, it's still the game of chess. Not much has changed in that sense. There's adversaries on the other side. They're trying to make a living or drive influence in some way. And you want to be thinking 3 steps ahead, but the variations of the games are changing, and your opponent on the other side is using more and more technology. So we also need to evolve at a rapid pace. But remember, we have to do it together, because if we're not going to do it together, they're going to win. So make sure you're collaborating along the way.